It's Think Out Loud on OPB. I'm Dave Miller. If a Hermiston horse trainer has his way, the first new horse slaughterhouse in America in 5 years could open near Interstate 84 in eastern Oregon. Since the last 3 slaughterhouses closed in 2007, many old and lame horses have been trucked to plants in Canada or Mexico. The trainer Dave Duquette says his new plant would slaughter 25,000 horses a year, including feral horses from tribal land. He says it would employ 100 people. Critics want Congress to pass a ban on both domestic slaughter and the shipping of horses to other countries where they could be killed. What's your take? If you have horses, what do you do when you feel that you can't take care of them anymore? Our website is opb.org/thinkoutloud. Our number is 1-888-665-5865. I'm joined by 2 people right now. First of all, David Duquette, who I mentioned, he's the owner of Duquette Quarter Horses and the backer of this proposed Oregon slaughterhouse. David Duquette, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you on. And Scott Beckstead is with us as well, the Oregon State Director of the Humane Society of the United States. Scott Beckstead, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me on.
David, starting with you, just let us know where the plans stand right now. Is this definitely going to happen?
Well, it's well underway, and we have the property bought. There's several phases to this situation, and it's not just a slaughter plant that's going to be put on there. The United Horsemen, our rescue rejuvenation program, is also going to be on the same property, which is 252 acres of ground. So the inner workings of trying to get the tribal commitments involved, because what we're doing here is we're involving the tribes, because the tribes, especially in the Northwest and the Navajo Nation, they have a huge problem with feral horses on their reservations. Just the Yakima Indians have over 15,000 feral horses that they can't do anything with. They have no way out for them. And the buyers right now that ship to Canada won't even take those horses. So they have no out for them, no way to deal with it. The Yakima Indian Reservation, when the GAO went up and looked at in a helicopter above it, it looked like a dirt lot. And they have a huge issue.
So walk us through your plan then. I mean, and I do want to get to the rescue and rejuvenation part of that, but sticking with the slaughterhouse part first, because that is the part that's gotten so much attention. Briefly, walk us through where you'll get the horses from and how this will work.
Well, we'll be getting horses from sale, or the horses that'll come into the plant. When I say we, I'm not going to be running the plant. That's not my deal. All I'm doing is facilitating the investors and the actual plan and helping set up the plant. And the plant will get horses. I mean, there's no lack of horses to go to a processing plant. I mean, it's obvious we're still shipping 100,000 abroad right now, and there's actually a huge amount of horses here in the Northwest. Like I said, the Yakima Indian Reservation have over 15,000. So in the first year, their sustainable herd size is about 2,500, 15 to 2,500, and they need to cut back that far.
But am I right that your plan would be that the plant could process something like 25,000 horses a year?
Right.
So, I mean, even if you were to do, go all the way down to 2,500 for Yakima, all of a sudden, I mean, you're not going to be getting too many more from Yakima.
Well, we're still going to be getting, that's going to take probably 2 years. We're not going to, at least 2 years to get all of those horses brought in and captured and bring down to a sustainable level of the plant up and running full steam. There's several other tribes in the Northwest. There's 5 tribes on the Northwest Tribal Horse Coalition, which they made into the National Tribal Horse Coalition to bring in the Navajos and some of the other tribes that are land-based horse-based tribes, I should say, that are having feral horse issues on their reservations. So there's several pools to draw from. The domestic industry, there's a lot of horses out there that could and should be going to slaughter. And that's where the part about the rescue rejuvenation program works hand in hand with that, because we're not advocating that everybody sell their horses to slaughter. We're not advocating that every horse goes to slaughter. But there has to be an out for the ones that aren't able to be viable in the horse industry, in the horse world.
Scott Beckstead from the Humane Society of the U.S., the Oregon State Director of the Humane Society of the U.S., what is your take on the proposed slaughterhouse?
Well, let's start with the fact that Mr. Duquette's proposal and his plans are going to be opposed by 80% of Americans. The fact is, in America, we do not eat horses. We view horses as companions. We don't eat dogs, we don't eat cats, and we don't eat horses. So I would say that the biggest problem with this kind of proposal is the negative consequences that it's going to have on the community where it's based. So just imagine for me, if you will, driving past this slaughter plant on I-84 on a hot summer day. Mr. Duquette is proposing to treat the wastewater from this project in algae ponds, open algae ponds. So imagine driving past this place on I-84 on a hot summer day, past ponds full of horse blood, horse manure, and pond scum. That's what the Hermiston community can look forward to. The fact is that horse slaughter is an economic killer for communities, and all you have to do is talk to the people in Kaufman, Texas, or any of these other communities where horse slaughter facilities were located, and it was absolutely devastating to these communities. So, what this really means, and what I would encourage any investor or any tribe or any other entity that is considering investing in Mr. Duquette's proposal, is litigation. From the moment the first application is filed with any sort of state or local agency, there will be immediate legal opposition. There will be unending protest to the slaughter plant. There will be constant regulatory scrutiny on the local, state, and federal, and possibly international level.
All right, Scott, I want to let David Duquette respond. You're talking about raining legal fire down, and so there was also the pools of blood and horse manure and whatever else in there. So a lot to respond to. And
I got it here. I can respond to that. And I was fully expecting Scott to go on the offensive as far as all of this stuff, and it's a typical HSUS scare tactic. And 80% opposing horse slaughter is not in any world that I know of. And the reason I know that is we had an independent research done and a survey done, and actually with all horse people, there's 69. Let me look at the exact number. It was 69.7%.
We can just talk.
Favored horse slaughter.
Does that matter to you? I mean, if you're looking at a business proposal, let's say that Scott Beckstead is right. Let's say 80% of Americans do oppose horse slaughter. Would that give you pause? Would that make you decide, you know what, I don't want to do this business?
No, because we're actually doing it for the welfare of horses, and even the founder of PETA came out and said that this was the wrong thing to have done.
Well, but that's the leader of PETA quickly backtracked and said
was I talking?
No, but David Duquette, you have spoken for a while. I'd like Scott to respond to that, just so listeners can know what I think you're talking about. The head of PETA, as I've read it, has come out in favor of ending the ban on domestic horse slaughter. She was quoted in a Christian Science Monitor article a few months ago, saying the amount of suffering that the ban created exceeded the amount of suffering it was designed to stop. So, Scott Beckstead, how do you respond to that?
Well, I'm not going to speak for Ingrid Newkirk or PETA, but what I can tell you is that all of the major national animal welfare organizations, the mainstream animal welfare organizations in the United States, are unanimous in opposing horse slaughter and in supporting a federal ban on the slaughter of horses for human consumption. It's in line with what most Americans believe, and it's an idea that has bipartisan support in Congress. And it's not a matter, frankly, of if horse slaughter will be banned. It's a question of when, and it may happen on the federal level, it may happen on the state level, it may happen on both levels. But the fact is, why would anyone invest in an enterprise where there is the promise, not the possibility, but the promise that eventually that enterprise is going to be illegal? It's a bad business move.
I want to let David Duquette respond to that, but let's take a call, bring some callers in. Our lines are jammed right now. Sally has called in from Underwood. Sally, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hey, go ahead.
Well, I am a lifelong horse lover and horse owner. Lifelong. I own 4 horses right now. They're down there in my barn. I've fed them this morning. They're geldings. One of them's 30 years old. And I got to say, I totally support what this man wants to do, because it is there. I'm lucky. When Sonny can't function anymore, I can dig a hole on my place, shoot him, put him in it, bury him. It's all over. It's good. But there are a whole lot of horse owners who keep their horses in stables, and there are no good options for those people. Also,
Sally, so what do those people that you know do?
Well, eventually they have the vet come out and put them down, and I guess they there are cremation options for horses. It's very expensive. I would venture to say it's probably $500 to put a horse down.
Can I address that, David?
Yes, Sally, thanks very much for that call. Yeah, Scott Beck said.
The fact is that in Oregon, most county landfills will take a horse carcass for $25 or less, and many counties will take horse carcasses for free. The cost of putting a horse down is roughly $250 a month, which is about what it costs to feed and care for a horse for a single month. And I would venture to say that, Sally, it sounds like your horses have a great life and a great home. You've got a 30-year-old gelding. I have one that turns 31 in a couple months. I think you and I would both agree that the worst thing we could do to an old trusted friend like that is put him on a truck, send him to Dave Duquette, where they're going to be slaughtered and served up on the dinner plates of wealthy Europeans. The fact is, people do have options, and the vast majority of horse owners make the responsible choice when their horse has reached the end of the trail, or their horse has a severe problem, or even if it comes down to they simply cannot afford to take care of the horse anymore, they do the responsible thing. They call the vet, and they give their horse a quiet, peaceful, dignified death, surrounded by the people they know and trust. So I guess the question I would have for Sally, and even for Mr. Duquette, is, if you would never send your own horses to slaughter, why is that? And if slaughter is not good enough for your horse, why is it good enough for any horse?
Sally is not with us, but David Duquette is. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'd like to go back and talk about, because Scott had quite a misconceiving type of a comment about how all the major organizations oppose horse slaughter. The AVMA, American Veterinary Medical Association, is in support of bringing back the option of horse slaughter. The AAEP is in support of bringing back the option of horse slaughter. Those are that's the American Association of Equine Practitioners. So the actual, other than these animal rights groups, which, to me are not the epitome of animal husbandry, and all you have to look at is the management of Scott Beckstead's Duchess Sanctuary. And that, to me, those are, telling signs, and the unwarranted seizures of horses of people like Denise Malott and Marsha Parkinson, which are going to weigh heavily on the Humane Society's bottom line at some point. They are not the epitome of taking care of livestock, and the horses are livestock.
David, a lot of people on our site have asked the very basic question of how the horses would be slaughtered.
How they would?
Yeah.
Well, with a captive bolt, they'd be. And one of the main misconceptions I want to get out there is that the animal rights groups all promote this idea that the captive bolt is not humane and it's designed for cattle.
Can you explain what that is for those of us who haven't seen it?
The captive bolt, it depends on which model they're using, but it sends a penetrating bolt like a bullet into the head, and it retracts back out. So it's just like being shot with a bullet. The captive bolt, and one of the misconceptions that they say is that it doesn't work effectively on a horse because a horse's brain sits further in their skull. Well, that's very deceiving, because if you take a cutaway of a horse's brain or a horse's skull and a cutaway of a cow's skull, it sits higher in the head. Their brain sits higher, but it's actually closer to the surface. So it would really work better on a horse than it does a cow.
Can I address that?
Please.
The bottom line here is that death in a slaughterhouse is not humane euthanasia, and that is the most vicious lie that is being perpetrated by the pro-slaughter factions. They want you to believe that putting a horse on a crowded truck, shipping it hundreds of miles without food, water, or rest, and whipping and beating it into a kill chute is humane euthanasia. Humane euthanasia is having the veterinarian come out and give your horse a quiet, peaceful death.
Can I ask you, Scott Beck, do you think that horses are they different than
horses? That is not humane euthanasia.
Scott Beck said, what makes horses special, and should they be treated differently than cows or chickens or pigs?
It's not a question of should they be. It's the fact that they are. They are treated as companions in our country, and the reason why horses are horses special, yes. And it's so discouraging for me to see people like David Duquette and Sue Wallace saying horses aren't special and there's no reason why we shouldn't be slaughtering and eating them. I mean, these are animals who overcome their innate fear of people and give us their trust and serve us. They have carried us into battle. This country was established and built on the back of a horse, and we owe this animal something better than to be butchered and sold for human consumption by wealthy Europeans and foreigners who do not put the same kind of cultural value as we do on horses. That's why 80% of Americans oppose horse slaughter. We don't eat horses in this country.
Let's take a call from Jenny, who's called in from Albany. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I would like to just provide some feedback of some of the ecological impacts of wild horse herds on public lands. I know wild horses are one of the cohort of animals that are being considered for slaughter. And the truth is that these herds are relatively unregulated. They're large and they reproduce rapidly. We provide them feed in the winter, and they damage riparian areas, including rivers and streams that fish migrate on. And equine slaughter is probably a good way to help regulate these populations.
Jenny, thanks very much for that perspective. Kathleen has called in from Portland. Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Hi. Well, I'd like to, for starters, respond to Jenny's comments. And I'm a wild Mustang and burro advocate and have been working to reduce and eliminate the roundups that the BLM has been, helicopter roundups that the BLM has been doing with the wild Mustangs. And in many cases, their herds have been reduced to just dozens from hundreds. They have lost millions of acres of their designated herd management area. They share their rangeland with 4 million cattle, and the fact is that there are less than 20,000 wild Mustangs remaining in all the western states. They have genetically diverse, great genetic diversity that we are destroying by the thinning out that we are doing. And in fact, they have much less impact on the riparian animal areas than other animals, particularly the 4 million cattle. And they, in fact, spread seed across the range because of their diverse forage and diet, unlike other herd animals. So Wow, there's just so much that I could comment on it.
But there's a lot that you brought, and thanks very much, Kathleen, for calling. David Duquette, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to what Scott Beckstead was saying earlier about American values and the place horses have in American history, and not selling meat to foreigners, to Europeans or other people. Do you eat horse meat?
I have, yeah.
Will you eat horse meat from your plant if it's up and running?
And I can tell you that, Scott, one of the other big deceiving facts that are things they try to play is that only wealthy Europeans eat horse meat. Horse meat is actually 40% less than beef in every country, not just Europe, not just anywhere. It's consumed in over 70% of the world's countries every day. There is not. China is the number one consumer of horse meat in the world as far as the country. And they are, the Tongans, we have a huge population of Tongans here in the United States that are excited. Because of my name being linked to all this stuff, I get calls from all types of different ethnic groups here in the United States that want it.
What USDA oversight would you have to deal with? Because one of the things that many commenters on our site and other places have brought up is all of the supplements, medications, dewormers, antibiotics, whatever else that horses are given that may not necessarily be fit for human consumption.
The only thing the thing that I'll say about that is that the same drugs are used. Bute is used in dairy cows every day.
This is phenylbutazone. It's a pain medication.
It's used in dairy cows every day. There's doesn't seem to be an issue with that. But the problem and the reason it's labeled not for human consumption on horses is because there was never the actual data was not produced or the studies were not done. Those things are all being taken care of now.
And David, I can tell you that is absolutely false. The FDA banned the use of phenylbutazone in all food-producing animals. The last animal that it was banned in is dairy cattle. You cannot use phenylbutazone, or bute as it's called, on any animal that is destined for slaughter for human consumption. And the European Union enacted a system of rules requiring any country that exports horse meat to the European Union to ensure that none of these substances are in horses that are presented for slaughter. And phenylbutazone, or bute, which is present in just about every first aid kit of every horse owner out there, is horse painkiller, aspirin basically, that is given to virtually every single horse during its lifetime. And the European Union rules say that any horse who has ever received bute at any time during its lifetime can never be slaughtered for human consumption to be served up in Europe. So this is something that the horse slaughter people really have not looked at, and it may explain why they are exploring markets, for example, in China, where the food safety and animal welfare regulations are much more lax. And I want to make sure that we address this concept of the horse rejuvenation and rehab. Is it okay if I talk about that briefly?
We have about a minute left, and so if you do that, and then we can give about a minute to David Duquette.
Mr. Duquette's plans for a horse rejuvenation and rehab center is an absolute scam, and it's probably illegal as well. You're telling me that you're going to have a 501c3 charitable horse rescue located on the same property as a horse slaughter plant. What horse owner in their right mind would ever bring their horse to a horse rescue where horses are being whipped and beaten into a chute and slaughtered? And you can't...
David Duquette, I want to give David Duquette a chance to respond. Scott Beck said you made some serious accusations. Thanks.
Very serious accusations,
David Duquette.
Scott, and you're a lawyer. You should know better than that.
Well, it's a built-in conflict of interest, David. You can't
No,
have
it's
the
not.
David Duquette, your response, and then we have to say goodbye to both of you. David Duquette?
The nonprofit is not going to operate the business. I'm not part of that, Scott. See, that's where you're in full denial of what's going on. And back to the Rescue Rejuvenation Program. Our program, actually, we have about 50 other rescues in the United States that want to be part of our program. And it's because we're not going to leave horses stand around that are not adoptable horses. Those horses will get processed, and they won't be taking up good resources for horses that could come in and be adopted back out. We have a very comprehensive program, Scott. And what has the Humane Society done for? My question to you is,
you know what?
Unfortunately,
there's no more time for more questions for anybody. We have to take a break, and I want to thank both of you for joining me. That's David Duquette. He's the owner of Duquette Quarter Horses. He's a backer of the proposed Oregon slaughter facility. And Scott Beckstead, Oregon State Director of the Humane Society of the United States. Coming up, we're going to ask how age should factor into sentencing when juveniles are convicted of aggravated murder.